Let me get the recording started here. And all right. So I usually record the intro separately. So we'll just be jumping right in. So I'm gonna get some information on like how to present you in the beginning, but I'm also gonna present you right now. Okay.
Okay, and my sound is okay. It's all good, yeah.
Yeah, your sound sounds great. Especially, I mean, you don't have a microphone right now, right? You're just using your laptop.
No, I have my mic. I can't remember what it's called. Yeti mic.
Oh, you got the Yeti.
It's just standing on a stand beside me here.
Is there, how far is it away from you?
Like that far.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
How's this? I just moved it closer. Is that any better, or does it make a difference?
It did. A little bit of the echo, not echo, but there was like a hollow sound. But as you moved it closer, it sounded a little bit more, or it sounded richer.
Okay. How about now?
Oh, yes, there we go. That's a radio voice right there.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Nice.
All right, well, let's get going. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Sebo Shen, the founder of the I Am Self Mastery Academy. You know what we talk about on these podcasts every week: expansion of consciousness, health, wealth, relationships, spirituality. This week, I have an awesome guest. His name is Orest Zwozdesky. Orest, I'm sorry, did I pronounce your last name correctly or not? I'm a stickler for those types of things, and I realized I didn't ask you before I started presenting.
Yeah, you nailed it just about. It's Zwozdesky.
Zwozdesky. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
You,
What
you
kind
were
of last name is that?
my dad was Ukrainian.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never come across that last name before. Well,
Mm.
Orest and I, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Marcus Fung. Marcus Fung is also known as a world bridger. And if you guys have listened to any of my meditations, well, Marcus, he's the one that makes all of the instrumentals. So you could thank Marcus for those meditations, as well as Marcus for introducing this awesome guest for us today. So without further ado, Orest, can you just give a quick introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, thanks to Sable for having me on the show. My name is Orest Zwozdesky. I'm coming from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada right now in the province of Alberta. Um, I'm grateful for the invitation to be here on the show and to be able to discuss some of the things that I do. And so I tell people that to put it simply, I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm a facilitator and a trainer and consultant essentially. But I guess what separates me a little bit, or I don't even know if it's separating me so much anymore, because there's so much movement in the world around consciousness and people stepping forward and answering that call from within. Uh, but I tell people when they ask, I help people connect their soul forces with their will forces and the forces of creativity and arrows from within themselves, and step forward as working towards becoming conscious co-creators of our reality. And so I refer to myself as an integration coach, because there's lots of, pieces from where people have been in the past stuff and where they're moving forward to into the future. And those two circles connect. And so in the middle of that circle is the present. And so we're always in this space of making room available within ourselves to integrate the past so that we can bring it into the present as we move forward into the future, into those things that we desire to create in the world. And lots of people I work with is they're wanting to create something on behalf of the greater good.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you use the word integration coach. I feel like integration is thrown around quite a bit. I've even started hearing like my friends that don't really do inner work start talking about integration. And within maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the conversation, I realize they have a completely different definition of integration. So, and my gut feeling is most people, when they hear that word, they have some idea of it. Maybe they had a friend that did a plant medicine ceremony and they come back and they're like, I have to integrate what I learned. I have to integrate what I learned. But in your definition, how would you describe integration to someone?
That's a good question. I would say that because the more that we can get present in the moment, and the more that we can get into our own flow and those rhythms that we've been putting forward in our lives, in that present moment, things are flowing through us. We're opening ourselves up and we're receiving information and we're receiving new learnings and teachings. And so through the course of coaching or even some of the programming stuff that I do in terms of facilitating, putting new concepts out there, it takes a minute for people to get stuff to really into their bodies, right? Into their system. And so that to me, it's like opening up for the newest expression of teachings and learnings and understandings. And when we bring that all together into ways that we can, coherently speak about it, then we're in a space where it's kind of integrated. And it's just sort of in our consciousness somewhere, and we're able to access.
Yeah, I think what I got out of that is the intellectual mind can be fast in the understanding of certain concepts, but to really make sure like it's also embodied within the, I guess, body, for lack of a better word, that takes a little bit more time. Is that accurate
Yeah, within the
summary?
body and the way that it affects our heart and the way that our spirit flows, with things, and so that when we do integrate it and it's embodied, like we said, then it becomes like wisdom that we can access, not
I
just an
love it.
intellectual thing, right?
Right, right. I love it. So not just intellectual knowledge, but something that you truly embody
Hmm.
is what I'm getting out of that. That's really interesting work. How did you get started? What's your personal story on that?
You know, I think my personal story begins, save a huge story short. Um, I did a real serious dance with drugs and alcohol in my younger years. Starting, right, probably experimentation from the first time I ever got drunk, I was 10 years old. And then started
Wow.
experimenting with alcohol when I was, age 12 kind of. And then it just sort of progressed into, you know, like a full-time job. And I couldn't even really hold down a job because of the alcohol and drug misuse. And so I came into a place where I had like a total moment of clarity, like an epiphany at age 26. And it's like the light switch went off inside me, and that was it. I just stopped using alcohol and drugs. And then from that point, my spiritual journey, if you want to call it that, began to unfold. And I was really always drawn to doing, being of service kind of work. And specifically because I have a Ukrainian name, but my mother was a woman who was Nahial, or Cree, they say, and French. So she was a Métis person, a mixed blood person. So she was part native and part French, and my dad was Ukrainian. And I grew up with the native side of my family. So when my journey began, I connected with elders way up in the north in the Yukon, and started attending ceremonies and started, really tuning into the native spirituality and that side of life. And so, yeah, I've always been on a path of service in different capacities. And then I got into coaching because I was doing work where I was like counseling people and working with families and counseling, and I just had a really difficult time separating myself from, the things that they had going on in their lives. And I used to sit there and wonder, like, God, there's got to be a different way that's going to work better for me, right? And then I came across coaching, and I took a coaching course, and they read this coach's manifesto, and as soon as they read that, I was like, I was in. And then we took this coach training, and I was just like, wow. And then it just continued to unfold, and I took more coach training and educated myself in that way. And then usually when you get out there and you're doing coaching work, it just sort of lends itself to getting involved in doing facilitation work and training and different things like that. So that's kind of how that unfolded. But you know my teachers that were up in the north, they do peacemaking work and restorative justice work all around the planet, and they go out and they speak and they deliver trainings. And so they were kind of mentoring me, and so it's no surprise that I end up doing the work that I do, speaking and coaching and facilitating work, right?
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell us? Well, I think I have some idea based on the personal story that you just shared with us about your childhood and drugs and alcohol being a big part of it, and then the spiritual awakening. But can you tell us a little bit why this work is important to you?
That's let's see, how can I answer this so that it's not like this humongous answer, or maybe it will be anyways. But I we come into the world and we have certain gifts, talents, or abilities. And I think part of our process is to uncover and understand what that stuff is. And so for me, it's a knowing, it's not just a belief. I have a knowing within myself that we are going through this serious ascension, for lack of a better term. We're going through this ascension, and this shows up in our nervous system with all the stress and all the anxiety and all the depression and all the different things that people are experiencing. That only got sort of enhanced because of COVID and isolation and all those things. But there's just such powerful, energetic occurrences going on right now, all the time. Eclipses and solstices and equinoxes and these full moon, new moons, but these things have even heightened. And it's like we're in this constant state of transformation and flux, and these higher level energies that are, splashing down on the planet. And so there's many people that are waking up, as you well know, right? Yeah. Who used to, have this kind of life, and now they're onto this, spiritual path and meditation and like healing and transformation and all these things, right? So I just strongly feel that we are in the midst of this huge transformation. It's not just people, it's also the planet. And that the planet as a living conscious being is also going through, a change. And there's a lot of people now, you get speakers out there in the world like Greg Braden and people like that. And Bruce Lipton and all these people are talking like we're moving from this third dimensional reality to this fifth dimensional reality. And and I've heard people refer to 5D as like heaven on earth, right? And so it's so funny because there's lots of people that I talk to, and they feel like, my whole life I never really felt like I fit in. And it's like, we're not here to fit in. We're here to help construct a new way to be in the world and a new society and stuff. And even fairly recently, I heard, the old acronym ADHD for attention deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. I heard that used, and they said that the new acronym for ADHD is attention dialed into higher dimensions.
Wow.
So I was like, yes, I've been like that my whole life. Like people even I'd be contemplating things and asking people questions about certain things related to consciousness, and they used to just look at me like, what color's the sky in your world, man? Like you're just into this whole different thing. Like even back in the day, like during the drug and alcohol days, like that was the stuff that was filtering through my mind, kind of, right? Yeah. So go ahead.
No. I mean, I'm glad that you really elaborated on that answer. I mean, there was like so many points of what you were saying where I wanted to interrupt you and like kind of like chime in with my opinion, but I really wanted to listen. And I mean, well, if I kind of unpack the last thing you said about the ADHD, I would say 50% of the time when I go in to get a checkup from the doctor will ask me if I've been diagnosed for ADHD. And so it's been probably at least like 15 or 20 times in my life ever since I was young until, I mean, it happened when I just got a new doctor out here. I don't know if it's the way I communicate or what that makes them think I may need some of this. And I really love the way you reframed it because I've never taken Adderall or Ritalin. Someone when I was younger had told me, he goes, you know what? Like CEOs, like the best attribute a CEO has is ADD. And so in my mind, just having that one person tell me that, I never looked at it as a hindrance, but in college and in law school as well, I remember everyone was just taking Adderall and Ritalin, and I would think like, wow, this is crazy. Like, I mean, you talked about your drug and alcohol use. I've used meth before, so I've smoked meth before, and I've taken Ritalin and Adderall, and I could tell you that, well, from a chemical composition, they're like one compound off from each other, but from a physiological perspective, like there's like so much overlap in the feeling. And at least in America, there's like this really big like movement of like no speed, no meth, none of these like things that speed up your nervous system. Yet Yeah, ADHD is, as I said, it's like every time I go in, they're ready to prescribe that stuff to me. So that was the first thing that really resonated with me. But actually, what resonated with me more was you talking about like this collective consciousness beginning to expand. Like when I talked about like the genesis of the show or my self mastery academy, it was for expansion of consciousness. You talked about third dimensional to fifth dimensional. Can you talk a little bit more about what's the difference between third dimension, between fifth dimension?
Just like third dimensional reality in terms of the world that we know, and the world where there's these concepts that this is all there is this hard physical tangible reality, and these certain laws and structures that are in place to say here's how reality is, right? And now so many people that I talk to anyways, or that I am associated to, there it's very much, the 3D is very much externally focused, whereas like the higher consciousness is very much this coming into this internal focus and being able to tune into what's in my heart and the energy that's flowing through my spirit, and receiving the impressions that I get from the if you want to call it the divine source, or through my connection to my higher self, or however however you want to say that, and trusting that that information and those impressions and those things are real and very valid. And from my own experience in life, like I trust that stuff, and I'm getting better at trusting it more and more, and just seeing how it has guided my pathway, and given me pieces of vision that I can step into and show up in the world, and the work that I do. It informs the work that I do. Even when I get an impression with somebody that I might be coaching, and I see something in my inner vision that I can share with them, it opens things up. It's like it just can take things into a totally different direction for people's lives, and so that's also part of the work that I do, is that from that external projection to more of an internal knowing about our lives, and then from that space with awareness projecting into the world, and knowing that it's not just me against the world. Like I'm connected. It's almost like, you remember that show Avatar, the first movie Avatar?
Oh man, so good. We just saw it like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I think it was even
I'm
better than I
excited they're
watched it
waiting a
10
new one.
years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But then they take their hair and they make that connection, right? And they talked about that sacred tree of life that everyone would
Yeah.
gather around, and the neural network of the trees connected. And so that's like the micro and the macro of our own brain chemistry, and the way we're wired, and that sacred web of life that we're all connected to, that we can't be separate from. The only place that separates is within our between our ears and our thinking. And so tapping into that field, even you look around at um, the speed at which information's coming to us, and so many channels open, that emails and texts and social media messages and notifications, and like all this stuff that's coming towards us. And with all that said, Marcus, you mentioned Marcus earlier. Marcus and I hang out. Well, I get an impression of Marcus in my mind, and I'll shoot him a message or a text, and he's like, "Oh, I was just going to contact you." Like, how many times does that happen? Like, this stuff is to me, it's like one step away. The smartphones and all this, one step away from full on telepathy that's happening, because it's happening anyway. So it's like being able to have good energetic boundaries and still create the space we need to function well in amongst the flow of all this input and data and information that's kind of flying our way, so that we can sift through it in a way that is is going to serve us and serve the people that we're serving ultimately.
Yeah. Well, I love that technology analogy that you made. And I loved how you talked about 3D is more of like an externally focused world, 5D is more inner focused. And that really resonates with me because I do believe that like those that are in the old paradigm, like when they accomplish something great, they feel good. When they get a big house, they feel good. When they're on vacation, they feel good. But in between those things, they're just like grinding, hustling, sacrificing time, health, relationships, um, and never realizing like these external validations are very temporary. And I mean, this is my interpretation of what you said. of
Mhm.
3D versus 5D. And then when I heard you talk about 5D being more inner focused, that definitely resonated with me, because what I heard you say, and maybe I'm paraphrasing correctly or incorrectly, was because it is inner focused, the what's going on in the external world may have some impact, but it doesn't have nearly the same type of impact in a 3D framework. And by making sure that the inner work is taken care of, whether it's mental health, whether it's tuning your frequency and vibration, at least in what I heard and what I've experienced is that, yeah, instead of looking at the external world to make you feel a certain way, if you understand you're whole and complete and you already feel abundant and you feel great, then the outside world can start reflecting that, and almost like a manipulation of reality through understanding the inner world. Is that a correct extrapolation of what you said, or did I just make some stuff up there?
No, no, I like where you went with it. I actually have, that's one of the things in the last couple of conversations you and I have had. I do appreciate your ability to listen and feed things back. You're very skilled in that regard. Um, that's accurate. That is sort of what I was getting at. And as you were feeding that back to me, it made me think um, about sovereignty.
Mm.
There's been so much movement and talk in recent times about sovereignty, and even my own ancestors, like my native ancestors as Métis people, First Nations, First Peoples here in Canada. Down there, you guys would refer to them as Native Americans, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Um, they looked at Métis people as they called them Otepeyimsawak, which in that Cree language, Otepeyimsawak means those who govern themselves, because they
Mm.
weren't put on reserves. They used to just kind of do their thing and hunt and trap and live their lives, but nobody was really governing them. And so to me, it's so funny that I'm in the world, and sovereignty's always been something that's a freedom and liberation. It's like primary drivers as to why I do the work that I do. And so I've heard lots of people talking about, food sovereignty, and lots of people about, self-governance over in terms of not even so much about a political thing, but just their own mental, emotional, physical, spiritual faculty, right? Or capacity, if you want to call it that. And so to me, the 5D thing is also exactly what you said. When I come and recognize within myself that I'm a sovereign being in my heart and my mind and my spirit, my emotions, my sensuality, my sexuality, like all those things, then I can create or co-create in the world from that internal wellspring of joy and peace and abundance, and just from that place, right? And the world will reflect back to me and show up in a totally different way than if I was tapped into all the lower vibrating places like fear and lack and scarcity and that kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. Oh man, that word sovereignty and then connecting it to the 5D, that definitely resonates with me. And you were talking about some technology about like, yeah, we send a text message with our phone, but that's like kind of like the mechanical way to do telepathy. And you also brought up like, like, hey, you just thought of Marcus. Marcus kind of like, like somehow knew like you were thinking about him and he texted you, and there was like this connection. And a lot of that like really just brought me alive, because when I think about the newer technologies, I do believe like these newer technologies like blockchain, where everyone has full transparency into what everyone else is doing, this is like starting to bring down the barriers of like this, like 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 us being able to hold certain information from each other. Like I know for entrepreneurs, when I was a CEO, every CEO I asked, how's your business doing? They would always say, great. And I was like, well, I know 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So I must know those 1 out of 10 entrepreneurs where everyone's doing great. And I was also that way. And what I realized was I could never get help when I would tell people the business was great. And I love like things like blockchain, because I do believe like blockchain that gives full visibility into whoever is on that platform, what they're doing, is like this new, like it could be like a metaphor for like, hey, if we live in a world where we're not hiding things from each other, like How much better could we communicate? How much better could we help each other? How much better could we support each other? And when you talked about like Marcus and you kind of like vibing on the same frequency, one of the things that I had in one of my meditations, I was like, I had been like finishing the sentences of a lot of my clients or potential clients, and the fact that I could finish their sentences made them want to hire me. Um, and I was like, that is kind of weird. Usually, as you said, I'm a pretty good listener. I tend to not like butt in like my opinion until someone finishes speaking. And I
Mhm.
was like, that was kind of odd, like I'm interrupting like people on these like client calls and things of that nature. And the message that I got back was like, Sabo, it's not that you were reading their mind. It was that you were so present with them that you guys were vibrating in the same frequency. And because you guys were tapped into the same frequency, of course, you guys were like having similar thoughts and transmissions, and you were just, more or less on the same wavelength as that person. So,
Mhm.
prior to that happening, if someone had told me like, yeah, telepathy and text messaging, I'd kind of be like, that could be kind of a stretch. But because I had that personal experience of like, how was I finishing someone's sentences? I thought that I was reading their mind. But what it was explained to me was, no, you're not reading anyone's mind. It's actually like your brains were in the same frequency. So you guys were able to pick up the same type of transmission. I'm curious, have you heard anything like that before? Or was I just maybe smoking a little bit too much pot, meditating and getting some weird transmissions?
You know what? You and I are jamming on the same frequency, if you want to call it that, because to me that stuff's happening all the time. And it really what we're doing is we're tapping the field of the collective intelligence and what's available and being present. And I'm actually in the process of writing a book, and I have part of my book that's talking about this phenomenon and talking about another thing that I've been really tuned in and witnessing and observing in my life and in the life of some of the people that I hang out with. And I'm calling it time bending.
Ooh.
And so, my girlfriend and I do this all the time. We might only have 30 minutes to get together and have a visit and have a tea or whatever. But we set the intention, okay, we know we have 30 minutes, but we're going to have way more than enough time to be able to do all the things that we want to do, like have the tea and interact and be able to, have that intimate, moment, smoochy and all that stuff. And there's plenty of time for everything, right? And that's the intention. And then at the end of it, it's like we go into this place of timelessness. And I realize the key, and you mentioned it, is presence. The more present that we can become, time is becoming less and less relevant. It's like I go to ceremonies all the time, and people always ask before they come, how long is the ceremony going to be? And it's like, well, that's a little bit hard to explain because sometimes you go there and it feels like you're there for 90 minutes and 5 hours has passed, or sometimes it feels like 5 hours and you've been there for 90 minutes. So it's like this time bending. I used to call it warping, right? But really it's like it's time bending, and it's happening all the time. Even I've been on road trips where I know how much time it usually takes me to get from one place to one place, and because I'm really present and I'm tuned into the clarity and the things that are rolling through my mind, and I'm not paying attention to time at all, and the next I arrive at my destination 30 minutes early. And this stuff is happening more, and of course now I'm reticular activation. I'm shining the light of my awareness on it and noticing it popping up all over the place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what a benefit of the reticular activation system to help you double down on things that like you want to notice, whether it's sacred numbers and things of that nature. And that time dilation is definitely something that I've been experiencing a lot more of as well. More of the more time has passed than I've actually felt. And I really love that feeling, that feeling of going, wow, it's felt like I've only been writing for an hour, but I've been sitting here for 5 hours and my wife is telling me it's time for dinner.
Yeah.
And I was sharing this story with oh man, I can't remember who it was, but it was someone else that Marcus introduced me to. And the person had told me, um, that person somehow knew my age. I can't remember, but she knew that I was 46. And then when I told her that, like I've experienced quite a bit of this time dilation in my life, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense." And I go, "Why?" She goes, "Well, you look so young for your age. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah. She goes, like, in her view, she felt that when you're present and in the moment and time flies by, it's not just that time flies by, it's that from a molecular biological level that you're aging like slower than other people too. And
Mm.
I know, like, at least for me, when she told me this concept, I was like, I wanted to believe it, because it sounded so cool. But there was, like, there's some skepticism from my side because, I come from this very like 3D logical, rational background where science was like beat into me. And
Mm.
here's someone telling me, like, yeah, you're aging slower when time goes by more quickly for you. But when I started asking like a lot of my friends, or not asking them, I looked at all of my friends that tend to look a little bit younger, and then I started like going, hey, like, is this person like a worry wart or are they present? There was like a really strong correlation between those that didn't look their age and those that seemed to be present. I'm curious, have you heard anything like this before?
I've heard things like this. It makes me actually think that the more present that we become, and the more tuned into ourselves we become, um, we go into a space of I would call it almost like timelessness a little bit, in a sense of we can look younger and younger. And I believe that when we're able to like work that I do in terms of some of the coaching stuff, you know, we take, I'm going to start doing this, and I've done this before, but in my ancestral healing workshop, as an example, we started taking before and after pictures, because people spend the day in this training and they do the work that we're doing and processing and things like that. And they look 10 years younger when they're done, because the heaviness and the stress and the worry and the concern, when we can like let go of that stuff, we can show up and appear way younger and feel way more vibrant. And age is just a number. It just like, how well do you feel within your energy, and how well are you incorporating these higher vibrations that are descending down upon us, and how that you're integrating and embodying these higher frequencies. Because it's so funny, because I have silver hair and I look, maybe I'm a little bit older, but it's so interesting, because I tell people who always used to bother me, if go back home and see friends, and they'd be like, wow, your hair is really getting gray, right? And I'd be like, yeah, but what's interesting is that when we're 65 and 70, I'm going to look exactly the same, and you're going to look old, right? Like,
Well,
there's just
yeah,
this youthful thing that can come out of us when we're tuned in, and we're actually recognizing that, holy smokes, I'm here on Earth's playground, co-creating this incredible life and lifestyle and these rich connections, and fulfilling and deep relationships. And it brings out a youthfulness that might have us look as though we're younger, but really it's just like, I believe it's more vitality, it's more aliveness that we're tapping into, right?
oh, totally, totally. And I would say outside of your gray hair, you have like the glowing skin of a young man. So, whoever those other guys are saying, they don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is like a really cool conversation. My wife got me a subscription to Gaia. When I had my spiritual awakening a few years ago, I didn't want to consume any spiritual material, mainly because I just felt that I'm easily influenced. And then when I hear things from other people, I tend to have experiences like that. So for like the last 3 years, it was just me meditating, and whatever came to my meditations, I would journal them down. And then as I got more comfortable, I would share some of these concepts with Marcus, and Marcus would be like, oh yeah, there's a guy named Bashar that would talk about this, or there's another lady, Abraham Hicks, that talked about that. And it started making like me feel like, oh wow, like there's some validation to this, because if I'm coming up with some of this stuff and it's being validated by others and I didn't have information privy to that, it felt very, at least for me, it felt much more like validated than being influenced by other people. Now, I'm curious, like, I want to get into your coaching, but we've been talking about like time dilation. Um, and you talked about like being present and being youthful and the vitality. I guess, is this something, oh, maybe we will talk about your coaching. Is this something that is like a common issue, or things that you teach your clients, or what are some of the more common challenges that you help with?
I would say that one of the big things that I'm noticing, and again, this is because of my understanding about what's unfolding in consciousness, if you want to call it that, that people are really up against a lot of stress and a lot of change and transformation, and not necessarily having a foundation or a context to be able to reflect things off of to get an understanding. They just feel stressed, right? And you see it where people, like, you go to the mall, or go out in public, or you see people on the road, and they're just not grounded, and you can just tell they're scattered, right? And conversations that I have with people, one of the main things that, and I don't know how this works exactly, but it's maybe one of the superpowers I have, I suppose, that I was gifted with when I came to the world, or I actually came into a bit of an understanding maybe even recently as to why. But I have an ability when people are in my space to help them ground. Even if we just sat there and had casual conversation, it just helps people like just come back inside themselves and get grounded. And I wondered about this, like, is this a superpower that I have, or what's going on with that? And then recently I've taken some further training into some ancestral healing stuff, and the man was talking, and he said, on an individual level, when we can get inside of ourselves and meditate and get grounded, or do the practices, the self-care practices that are going to allow us to feel as though we're grounded, not so scattered, pull our energy back, we'll have a certain level of depth and awareness, and that's great, right? When we extend that out to include the ancestral realm, when we get a grounding and bring awareness to that realm, then it's a more depth and more awareness, more deeply grounded place. And then when we can ground into the collective, and from that space, we can have a deeper ground and a deeper awareness about what's going on in the world. And he said, each one of those places, the individual, the ancestral, the collective, it accesses a different part of our nervous system. And so when we become grounded and anchored in that part of our nervous system, through our awareness, we can have things begin to arise and things begin to drop into our awareness. And it's information. It's like we're just kind of, it's like you said, attunement, right? We're tuning in and we're just pulling information into ourselves. And it's like, I didn't get that from a book. I didn't, hear somebody say that, and things are just coming through. That's a part of us, being able to tap into that collective field of intelligence, if you want to call it that, or I'd like to call it the co-creational field, and bring through, just like a hollow bone, bring through information that we can then journal about. And then, that to me, that's where my creativity flows out of, right? And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with people right now, especially because most people are in overwhelm, and they're just like, getting burnt out, and because there's just this endless stream of efforting, and being able to move from this co-creative space where I'm really firmly grounded in my awareness in these different realms, and I'm creating from this movement inside of me, and I'm showing up in the world in that place. It's like I don't need to be in control of it. I can flow in it. And certainly, like yourself, you've got your mastermind group that you're helping entrepreneurs level up and do their work. You're providing the structure like the banks of a river, and so that they can really flow. And so I'm doing the same thing through coaching principles and practices and different tools and different pieces of awareness, helping people get grounded and just be able to breathe. And so really what it's all about, it's nervous system regulation. When you're meditating all the time and you're in your zone, and then you're just present and you're listening to people, you're creating a space where certain things become possible for others simply by your presence. And this is the gifts that we can give to others. Like, we have certain gifts. And so when we're present in our depth and in our awareness, connected to the different realms, and we show up and we create an energy or a space for others, certain friends I hang out with, and we create a synergy together, and certain things become possible, certain ideas or inspirations become possible. And I hang out with somebody else, and the energy dial up is a little different. And so other things become possible. And so we do that for one another. We make certain things possible through our presence. I guess certain gifts become available to us through our presence with others, right? And so helping people to tune into themselves, get grounded, pull back all that scattered energy, be able to let go of, anxiety and nervousness and uncertainty and doubt and all these things, to come back into that place of remembering and going, oh, well, I know that. That's right. That's right. You do know that, right? And so now move from this place within yourself to show up powerfully and grounded and co-creating in the world, and whatever your dreams and your desires are, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that was so awesome. You know, I've heard you talk about ancestral healing before, and I have a feeling that the audience listening may have some idea what that means, but can you go into a little bit more detail on what ancestral healing is? And, when you're dealing with these clients with overwhelm, how do you know when it's time to do ancestral healing or not?
I think that it's, for example, I just had a discovery call with a lady, and we did a little piece of ancestral work, and really what it was us just calling the ancestors, not just my ancestors, their ancestors, and asking for them to come and help, and we did this guided visualization sort of slash meditation, and she had a really powerful experience with, like, her grandmother who showed up and sort of helped her with some information, or gave her some insight or something. So that's kind of one of the ways. Like, I know, because I go in and I work with lots of what you guys down there would call Native Americans or Indigenous people. There's a lot of people that are very strongly connected to the culture. And even yesterday, I was out facilitating a program with these folks, and lots of times an elder might say a prayer to start, a group, or somebody might share a song, traditional song. And I said to the people, you know what? When I hear people pray, like, I love it, right? But I realized, like, our job as a person that would be, part of this, and listening and taking it in, our job is to open up a heart and receive the blessing of their prayer.
Mm.
Instead of just sitting there and listening to somebody say something that sounds nice, it's like, let's get active inside of that, and let's open ourselves up, and let's not just rely on that elder or that person to invoke the ancestors. In my own self, I want to speak to my own ancestors and ask them, come take part in my day, come and help me out, come and bring your protection, come bring your insight into my awareness, come and share the gifts that you came into the world with, and how they can flow through me, and I can help people. And even and I get impressions of things. So even, as we were speaking earlier, a couple times now this happened, but as you were reflecting and feeding back what I was saying earlier, and then I came back and spoke about sovereignty, I was just sitting here, and it's like all of a sudden I get this awareness that seems as though this energy is swirling this way, and I begin to sense this thing about sovereignty. And so then I share that. To me, and maybe I'm in, I won't even put it out there. To me, what's going on, it's like an ancestral thing. My guides are there, my spirit helpers, my ancestors, my relatives, and people have different names for these things. My angels, the ascended masters, or whatever you want to call that, right? The people that show up in your energetic field, that lean in, that you can glean insight from, and bring certain things. It's like, again, like that hollow bone, where this field of energy, that even Heart Math Institute has done research now through the Global Coherence Initiative, where they're saying they've measured up to 4 kilometers away a person's heart-centered energy coming out into their field, 4
Wow.
kilometers away from their body, right? So when we're in tune and we're grounded in our body, we're this giant field of awareness, and we're like a hollow bone. This channel of energy can flow through us, and we can access the higher selves. We can access the Akashic realm. We can access our spirit guides and our helpers and our ancestors, and we can allow that energy, and you can feel that, right? Like, it lights us up. It heats my body up, even just speaking about it, right? Like, and this is the invitation or the invocation of a 5D reality. And so even recently, I heard this lady, I read it, and it really resonated with me, because I used to, set an intention in the morning that I get up, and on this day, for myself and for people that come across my path, I want to experience magic and miracles on this day. And that would be my intention. And so I read her piece out of her book, and she said her intention, because she's creating from 5D, is that she wants for herself and all the people that cross her path on this day to experience heaven on earth.
Mm.
and to see how the day rolls out coming from that place. It's interesting to see how things have been rolling out when I've been stepping into that intention of, I want myself and others to experience heaven on earth, and the richness in our exchanges.
Yeah. Oh man. Again, there was so much that resonated with me there, and I'm trying to even think of like where I would like to start a response. But I think the thing that really resonated with me was you were talking about like, yeah, just during our conversation today, you know, you're present with me, and then you started getting this this I don't know if it's like download or influence to talk about sovereignty, and then you just received it and then you mentioned it, and like I jumped on that like really excited, you know. And you know, like one that it just reminded me of like a story of you know, like I was meditating, and when I first started meditating, I would hear all these different voices. I just thought it was just my own imagination or like my own voice, just, you know, like thinking about some like interesting creative ideas. And as I meditated more and more, I started like being able to delineate these voices. Now, I don't know if they're my guides or ascended masters or my higher self, but there is a delineation between these voices. And I lose my stuff all the time, like my wallet, my keys, my phone. And one day I couldn't find my phone, and I have this little thing on my keychain, which was it's a thing that could help you find your phone called a tile. So I'm pressing the tile, and it can't. The tile ran out of battery, so I'm frantically looking for my phone, can't find it. I got to take my daughter to a rehearsal class, and then I was like, hey, let's just slow down for a second. And then I asked my guide, I'm like, hey, where's my phone? And the guy was like, you know, just go check next to the toilet. And I went to the bathroom, and yeah, that my phone was there. And then I was going, man, like I've been looking for this thing for the last 20 minutes. Like, why didn't you tell me it was in the phone? He goes, I had been telling you this whole time. It was in the restroom. You just weren't listening. And it really kind of like, it was like a great example of like, okay, hey, when I'm sitting still and I'm clearing my mind, I have access to this. Kind of when I get into my busy day, I'm just like doing whatever I'm doing, and I still have access. I'm just not paying attention. So now I'm really trying to be like not just in meditation, but throughout the day, you know, just being sensitive and aware that like I'm receiving inputs that could guide me, like finding finding my cell phone in the toilet. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. And so it sounds like intention is something that's very important to you. Being present is something else that's very important to you. And one of the things that I like to do on this podcast, because we tend to talk about like very ethereal metaphysical things, is, well, for the people listening, you know, I'm sure they really enjoyed all the things that we spoke about. But is there like one practical, tactical thing that you could have them do today that could get them more present, or to get them more intentional, or to get them more connected?
There's a number of things, but the most immediate, easiest thing, because people are always on their phones all the time, and you spoke to it when, you know, mentioning that you know, just weren't paying attention, and the guidance was there. And again, that's lots of the things that I work is help people get clear, help people get open, and help people stay grounded, right? But if you take your cell phone and you set a timer 3 times or 5 times in a day to go off, and put a reminder word there. And my reminder word used to be Geronimo, which to me meant drop down inside yourself, take a few breaths, get yourself clear. And so they're like little mini check-ins through the day, because obviously our days can get full and get busy, and we're all over the place. And so I'm always using my awareness to always kind of return to breathing into myself. And so these little triggers of our alarm that goes off, just as a reminder, oh yeah, drop down and tune in, right? Okay. And so that's the practice, that's the discipline, like you're saying, when I'm in these meditative states and I'm clear and I'm grounded and I'm open and I'm receiving guidance and I'm really tuned in. And then I have, like, you know, the 12,000 things that need to happen in the day. How do I keep connected to that state? And so the practice is to always be tuning, for me. And I had a teacher one time who had this thing called double arrow awareness. And so what that meant was tuning into myself and then like smiling into my heart, so that my heart smiles.
Oh,
and I could lose my double arrow attention awareness like 1,000 times in a day, but to remember to just breathe and bring it back in. And especially when I'm with people, like even when we first started, in my mind I'm like, okay, or drop in, take a nice deep breath, and you took a few moments to just kind of breathe before we started, and I'm just like double arrow attention, and I have this smile inside my heart,
Mm.
and I can walk around feeling like that all day. And when I lose that, when I get pulled out of my center and I'm distracted into something out here, just to remember, drop back in, double arrow attention, breathe, smile, right, okay, and now move forward. So that in and of itself is a practice that we could, work on all day long, every day. And what's so interesting, through that double arrow attention, I understood where compassion lived inside my heart and how I could access it quickly and easily, right? So many gifts come from just that, even, right? But to start,
Yeah.
set the phone alarms and check in.
Yeah. Oh man, I heard so many things here. So let me just kind of repeat back. One of them, I love this tip so much because I hear so many people talk about smartphones and this like evil way social media is ruining the world and all of these different things. And, I mean, I even look at like drugs the same way, which is they're all just benign things, like if you know how to use them correctly, they could be extremely positive for your life, So I love that you're taking a piece of technology that so many people think are like ruining their lives or taking their attention away and utilizing it to bring attention back to themselves.
Mhm.
And I've had friends that have like gotten like flip phones or like basic phones again for like a month or two and then come back just telling me, yeah, like I didn't spend as much time on my phone, but I missed out on like so much like news and connectivity of these other things. So I very much believe that, yeah, if you know how to use your smartphone correctly, it could be extremely additive um, to your life. And the other thing that really stood out to me is I heard you talk about the heart several times, like listening with your heart. You talked about the Heart Math Institute and being in heart brain coherence. And then now you were talking about like smiling at your heart. So maybe we could kind of wrap it up with just like, all of this heart talk, this heart centric talk. And, kind of what I got out of it was like, hey, like, if you could feel that feeling of compassion in your heart, then why couldn't you feel joy or any other feeling generated from within versus having to wait for something to happen externally? And my belief is if you feel happy inside, you will notice more happy things that are going on the outside and be able to kind of like pick up on that type of reality that you want. So that's kind of what I was getting out of what you were saying with all the different times you brought up heart. But I wanted to ask you, like why was that like such a epicenter of like so many things that we talked about? And could you just elaborate a little bit more on like listening with your heart? Because that was the thing that really kind of stood out to me. It was like, oh yeah, well, it kind of made sense, listen with your heart, but what does Orest actually mean? Because I do think that if what I'm thinking is what you mean, then listening with your heart, I believe, could maybe solve so many of the world's problems.
Mhm. You know, I first of all, I really like that word that you just used there, the heart centric. I like that. I'm writing right now because so much stuff in the world is about like growth mindset and mindset this and mindset that, and it should be. We need to get on top of our thoughts and be able to use our mind in a way that is going to serve and support us. And I'm writing right now about our heart set, so that we can tune into our heart, because our heart is just this incredible place, and you called it referred to it as an epicenter. It is, it's the main hub of all things, and so our heart receives a signal from the earth receives a signal from the center of the spiral galaxy, and our heart gives a signal to our brain, which instructs our whole physiology, and so it's doing important work, and so when we tune into the heart and we feel that, I heard this guy talk before about the central eye of the heart. Like our heart has an eye or a doorway. Even if we tuned into that and imagined that doorway or that window of the heart opening and that light streaming forth. And if I use that to guide myself in the world, because I can feel and I can sense, and part of what is happening in the world is that there's so much of an intellectualized way that we can show up in the world, and that's fine. And there's many, really intelligent people. And then when we can, connect into our heart's intelligence and our heart's knowing and wisdom, and we can show up and infuse our energetic field with the energy of that open doorway to the heart, and then use our intellect and our mind in combination with that. And I believe that it's not even a belief, it's my knowing that when I'm moving from that place and I connect with you, like we're jamming, and even just as we're talking about the heart a little bit, like we just dropped into a deeper place. And it's from that place that, understanding can happen, and deeper acceptance, and we can connect in peace even though we have differences. We can stay grounded in that place and have challenging conversations without needing to judge, or without needing to make somebody wrong, or without creating a disconnect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Like I do, you talked about knowing quite a bit as well. And I do want to have you on for another episode where we talk about knowing, because I think this is like a very powerful place to come from, when you just absolutely know, like, this is my truth, and I'm going to run with it. And, the other thing that you're talking about, I was just very grateful to have this conversation with you and having Marcus introduce you to me, because a lot of what you were talking about with the heart, like, well, you saw me closing my eyes, and it was just like really like resonating to the core. And I was just feeling like just so much gratitude that, like, a lot of these ideas that I had or that I've seen in my meditations, just hearing you talk, like, has really like validated and really empowered me to go, okay, this wasn't just some figment of what I'm talking about. Being heart-centered is so important. And are you familiar with a guy named Sam Harris by any chance?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, so Sam Harris is I wouldn't say he's like the American version of Jordan Peterson, but he's like a highly intellectual person, very very deep thinker, meditates a bunch, but is a very logical, rational person. So he's had transcendent experiences, but he believes these are just like neurons and, different things, synapses happening, creating these types of experiences. And because he's such a logical, rational person, it's hard to disagree with him from a logical and rational place, but he's always getting in trouble with the stuff that he says. And this conversation has like really kind of illuminated is that, like, yeah, he might be logically and rationally right about whatever he's talking about, whatever social issue he's talking about, but because he's only coming from it from an intellectual perspective, it's like, yeah, rationally, logically, you may be right, but you just lack so much heart in what you're saying. And this is why, even if you're logically and rationally right, like, none of the people that could connect with you connect with you. And he's like a liberal, and I would say most of his detractors are liberals as well. And so I kind of made this connection that it's his lack of connection to heart that is missing from the way he's delivering his information, because his information is so rational and logical that it's hard for you to disagree. But then at the same time, you're just like, well, just seems heartless. Like, why not just be a better person and just, it's okay to be wrong if you're helping someone else. You don't always have to be right all the time. So that's kind of what I got out of your last transmission here. And so I want to be cognizant of time. I tend to talk a lot as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
I want people to be able to, those that resonated with you, which I imagine is a high percentage of the people listening, Orest, how can they get in touch with you? And do you have any events coming up?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking at a summit on December 7th. I'm going to be a part of a panel. They're talking about ancestral healing, and then I'm going to be delivering my own talk as well that same day on the 7th. And it's an online summit that's a free event, and people can upgrade to the VIP and save the recordings and stuff. But it's called the Soulful Revolution. They can find it. I've got it posted on my Facebook. People can connect with me on my website, which is Zwozdesky.com. So www.zw. I guess in the US, lots of people resonate with Z. ZWOZDESKY.com. And I have people can connect for a discovery session. I have a few heart offerings there guided meditation audio, and a vision wheel that people can download that stuff and kind of step into a space around creating a different vision for themselves and their lives. So there's that event, and then I'm going to be delivering an ancestral healing workshop January 14th, and that's a in-person thing here in Canada. And we're talking about putting it online. I'm going to be at the end of January 28th, 29th weekend delivering a workshop with a colleague of mine, and it's kind of a ritual approach to grief, because that's another sort of big thing that's on people's radar with all the shift and change and loss and jobs and people and different things like that. So that again is also a live event. But I'm going to be launching into in the new year an online program that I'm going to be delivering, and it's going to be called the Evolutionary Edge. And so tools for change and for transformation. And it's going to be, getting into things like we spoke a little bit about here in terms, a little deeper dive into time bending and how that might serve us. And, things like through the gift of our presence, what becomes available to others, because we're each offering something just even energetically, from our being. And so these are the things that are in the book. These are the things that are going to be in the workshop. So that's going to be launching in January so people can access. And also on Facebook, I have a group that I'm just starting, and it's called the Vision and Voices Collective, and they can find me on Facebook. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. So you sound like you're not a very busy guy, is what I got out of that.
I'm
Well,
moving into it. Things are just, I still have amazing time to be able to, to do my own self work and my own integration and my own self care, and lots of things are going on, and I'm super appreciative for the opportunity, and today, like, just to reach people in your audience and hopefully, bring something good for them to be able to tap into. Because I think one of the marks of things that are like good teachings, it's not like, new mind-blowing information all the time. It's like a reminder that people already know these things.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that might be mind-blowing in itself, right? Like when they start realizing, wow, that wisdom was already within me. And the last thing I really want to call out is I kind of made a little joke about, oh, you sound like you're not busy at all. But then you said, well, I am being highly productive, but I still have plenty of free time to work on myself, relationships, maybe even time bend and do a 30-minute date, right? And so I'm a
Yeah.
big believer that whatever you believe, like, hey, only rich people get rich because they're greedy. If that's your belief, like, yeah, that's kind of the reality that you're going to have. And I know many people that very much believe like you either live a life of freedom and spiritual connection, but you leave behind any type of financial stability, or you're rich and wealthy and spiritually bankrupt. And I always thought like these, like, kind of black and white simple frameworks. Like, I just thought, man, life has to be like more than that. And this 5-dimensional heaven on earth, I very much believe in. Like, you're already living in the 5 dimensions, which is you're able to be productive, you're able to have downtime, you're able to fit in 30-minute dates and be totally happy with being
And then
on earth.
manifesting abundance along the way. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was awesome. That was awesome. Well, Orest, thank you so much. I hope I could twist your arm to come back onto a future episode, and really appreciate you not just illuminating our audience, but really teaching me a lot about ancestral healing, being intentional, and listening with your heart. So thank you so much, Orest.
Yeah, thanks, Sibo. It's been a great pleasure and an honor. And I, again, last time you and I spoke, it's like we get on we jam together, we vibe together. I even came up with this new thing recently, like soul tribe gathers and vibes, right? Instead of the old birds of a feather flock together kind of thing from back in the day. Soul tribes gather and vibe. That's what we do, right? And so that's what we were doing here today, in my opinion. And we're, jamming, and we're talking off of one another, and listening and just present. And it's been a beautiful experience. I would love to be on the show again, and it would be an honor.
Yeah, I think I had to do some time bending myself because my little alarm went off, was like, hey, you got 5 minutes to wrap it up. So, I really enjoyed this discussion, and I know we will have plenty more in the future. Thank you again.
For sure. Okay, thanks. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. Let me just stop the recording. Oh man, that was awesome. Thank you for that conversation.